All right, it's been a while since we've done some reacts, and we're actually going to start out with a creator that's not a Star Citizen creator, but he plays MMOs, and it's a it's Josh Strife Hayes. You guys know Josh, but I think that like I've been talking about this a lot more lately, and it's the idea that I have been sharing my experiences and what I love about MMOs and why I find Star Citizen so frustrating. And it becomes very apparent when you watch what I love about MMOs. And I think sometimes it's there's a disconnect between what I love and what might be happening in SC. And then sometimes there's a clear connection of like the future for Star Citizen and why it's so exciting. But this one is called The World of MMO Whales. And Star Citizen is definitely whale hunting when it comes to their funding model and all these things. So I really am interested in seeing what he has to say, because no matter how much you've spent on Star Citizen, whether it was $45 or $10,000, I mean, if you want, this is going up on YouTube, so you guys can leave a comment down below or type it in Twitch chat how much you guys have spent if you're comfortable with sharing that. But the funding model for the game is to create whales. There's no denying that. And yeah, here we go. Josh Strife Hayes.
Imagine you own
whales.
a fantasy shop inside a fantasy game. Maybe you sell swords or armor or potions. Business is steady and you have a nice regular set of customers. Sometimes people
That's kind of cool, because that's what we're literally doing in game right now.
People come in and browse around for a bit and then only take the free samples. Some people drop a coin or two every week, and some people spend 20 or 30 coins a day. You're making enough to survive. But then one day, a new customer arrives, spends tens of thousands of gold coins, and then sets out to adventure. That one person just made you more money in a single transaction than every other customer combined over the entire month. That person is a whale, and if you want to make money, you will now focus your entire monetization strategy on finding more of them. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Strife Hayes. You've probably heard me use the term whale several times before. It's actually a gaming industry term. It means player who spends a large amount of money in any one individual game. You can find whales in all walks of life, from card games to tabletop games to sports, but in video games the term generally means someone who spends a large amount of cash on a single game. A whale can appear in any project where
So he actually doesn't know the definition of whale or the definition or the history of whale. So a fish is an idiot in gambling. Fish is a dummy, right? If you're a dumbass, you're a fish. And dummies play casino games, typically poorly, or games that the edge is not in their favor, like blackjack. Well, you can make blackjack in your favor, obviously. Roulette, games like that, and they play huge. So a whale is just a term for a big fish, because a shark is a big fish that's good at the game. A whale is a big fish that's bad, right? So whales aren't playing the game optimally. They basically, you're losing money to them, right?
Spending money gives you a distinct advantage over other people. What you might not fully grasp is the symbiotic nature of the relationship between the whales and the free-to-play players, or exactly how much money whales spend. Because one whale is easily worth 10 or 20,000 casual players to a game's developer. That is how much money they spend in the game. That is how valuable they are as a player. So let's dive into this insane world and go whale hunting. Before we begin, consider dropping a like on the video or subscribing to the channel. Ring the bell if you want all the future notifications. And as usual, a big thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going. More on how you can support at the end. For now, let's begin. Whales can exist in other formats, from card games like Magic the Gathering to tabletop games like Warhammer, or even conventions and cosplay. But we'll be focusing on the video game landscape and the MMORPG genre. The main factor for can you whale is the monetization method of the game. For whaling to be possible, there must be a direct system where spending more money means more advantage over other players. So free-to-play games that sell you upgrades or upgrade materials like Neverwinter or Runes of Magic, games where you can break
or spaceships or grenade launchers to ruin an entire event CIG spent 7 months on. Or whatever.
Down cash shop items for rare but essential endgame materials like Black Desert Online. Games where consumable items are essential and available for sale in the cash shop like Arcade or DK Online or Fiesta Online or pretty much any free-to-play game. If money means advantage, whales can be caught. So maybe you've played a game for a few days.
And there's the argument that there's no advantage in Star Citizen and such. That is simply just not true. If you're able to buy an A2, you're going to maybe have an advantage at Jumptown. If you're going to be able to buy a mole or a prospector before earning it in game, you have an advantage over that other person. There's always a race to get somewhere or do something. Star Citizen doesn't really have their game in it yet, and that's kind of why it feels like there is no winning, because there is not much of a game. So the advantages are possibly going to be there where they're not quite there yet. And that's what I'm always concerned about, is CIG is like designing all these spaceships, giving you all these options to buy $10,000 packages, $5,000 package, $2,000 package, $100 packages, like, right? Like all over the place, spending tons and tons of money. And you can argue that there is no inherent advantage, because I see that being typed in chat right now, but there is no inherent game to gain an advantage at. But I can tell you right now, something like grenade launchers being purchased on the website, which you can do as a subscriber, which you can actively destroy Siege of Orison events for people having those, and then just simply, when you die, reset your account and go again. That's an advantage, where actually having to loot them takes a ton of time.
Days, a few weeks or a few months, and you've dropped some money here or there. You've spent £10 on a mount, you've spent £20 on the beginner pack, maybe you spent £50 on transferring your character server to server a couple of times. That's not whaling. That is nothing compared to the money that whales spend. Maybe you've spent upwards of £200 or £300 on your favourite game. A whale would consider that cute. The YouTube channel Pocket Gamer Biz has a terrific video on the subject called Let's Go Whaling, where they explain the monetization tactics used to capture and entice whales into spending, including daily login bonuses to form a habit, beginner packs to start the purchasing chain, limited time offers for fear of missing out, and then mechanics such as matching you against players always slightly better than you, making you think a small cash boost is all you need, and then ultimately slowly taking away the power you are purchasing, so you keep purchasing more. It's a great video, but I want to leave the methods specifically and look at the actual numbers these people spend. To understand why game designers care about whales so much, we need to understand the mathematical phenomenon known as the Pareto principle. Simply put, the Pareto...
Okay, so before he explains whatever this principle is, it's my understanding that, like, back in the day, games made money, but not in comparison to other industries. So if you were, and it's still the same way for developers, if you were going to take your coding skills, let's say, you're probably better off going to a Fortune 500 company, a Silicon Valley type company, and coding for like Google, Meta, Uber, those kind of places, right? Because they're going to pay you way more money than you would get paid as a game studio, most likely, especially for like entry-level positions and stuff like that. You know, I know my brother works for a very big company. I'm not obviously going to say who it is, and he does incredibly well, and he's just a junior, and it's like wild in comparison to what some people make in the gaming industry. So my guess is that games don't make as much as huge apps, things like that. So they're trying to find ways to make as much money as possible. And then you have companies like Blizzard, EA, and these companies who kind of have gone down some of these paths that are making insane amounts of money. So now they're becoming these huge companies, and obviously companies, they're out there to make a profit. They're not out there to make a passion project, right?
The principle states that 80% of any given outcome is actually caused by only 20% of the input. And when you look for this, you see
that's
this
the Pareto principle? I always just thought it was the 80-20 rule.
Everywhere. It's scarily accurate in real life. 20% of your carpet will get walked on 80% of the time. 80% of the radio stations available will only play 20% of the music available. 20% of the most powerful Magic the Gathering cards see play in 80% of tournament decks.
In the 2 or 3 million hands that I played at online poker, 20% of the players I played were winning players, and 80% were losing players, like almost exactly.
80% of MMORPG players only focus on 20% of the game. The 80-20 principle is everywhere. It's scary when you start to look for it.
It really is scary. It's wild.
In business. In any given business, 80% of your income will often come from 20% of your user base or your customers, and only 20% of what you actually sell. This means if you're a smart business owner, you want to spend.
And I think that is the case for Star Citizen with their whales. I think that 80% of the players have purchased just a starter pack or something small-ish to get them started, and then they just are either not playing the game or they're playing the game and making some level of progression inside of it with that. I fully and truly believe that. I think 20%, maybe even less, are these massive mega whales that are just spending insane amounts of money on a game for whatever reasons they do. I'm not going to knock it. I come from an industry where you spend your money how you want to spend it and you don't give anybody a hard time for it, really. But it is it's something that does frustrate me because I do believe that it takes away from the experience.
Spend your time focusing on those 20% of customers because they drive a vast majority of your income. But you can extrapolate further. If you take those top spending 20% and apply the Pareto principle again, it still works. 20% of those top people are spending 80% of that money. And then you can do it again.
It just
20% of the smaller, more elite group is still spending 80% of that money. And it's this insane mathematical imbalance that makes focusing on whales so profitable. This article on VentureBeat, What It Means to Be a Whale, explores some of the numbers and how different companies class whales, including this part about mobile game Clash of the Dragons, where 40% of their revenue came from 2% of their player base, who were spending more than $1,000 each. 90% of their income was created by players spending over $100 each, and the top player had spent around $6,700. This article on Eurogamer actually interviews a self-confessed whale, a Twitch streamer called David, who works as a DJ and an audio engineer in everyday life, and he has, over the past 5 years, spent around $20,000 on loot boxes in various games, most often in the mobile game King's Raid. He also spent $5,000 in the MMORPG Atlantica Online.
What the hell is that?
6,700, 5,000, 20,000. They're not insubstantial amounts.
I define the experience for me. I cannot define the experience for anyone else. This is just responding to Twitch chat and Q here. I define the experience for me, and by people existing that can get advantages or buy things that I would like to progress to, that ruins my experience for me. That's all I could say. It's just how I feel.
Of money by anyone's standards, but they're not exactly multi-millionaire levels.
I want to get into the game, and I want to grind, and I want to work, and I want to know that you're on my heels working towards whatever reputation, ship, owning land, owning something, all that's out of the day. All that's gone, right? the second that they sold land, sold spaceships, sold armor, sold weapons. What I hope for specifically at least the weapons is that the weapons will just turn into skins so you can apply them to your weapons when you have them. Ship skins are obviously ship skins. I have no issues with selling any of those things. But yeah, reputation is the grind at this time. No, it's not, because there's no reward behind the reputation. There is no grind. There is no game currently in Star Citizen. It's just like you say. It's the experience, experiencing the game with your friends. The issue here is that CIG is going to make a game eventually. We can kind of see it with reputation. We could see it with these things. And I'm afraid that the choices that they've made to fund their game and how whales have interacted with the game and kind of changed the whole dynamic of everything, it completely changed what the meaning of LTI. It completely changed everything with the amount of ships they sold and the ships that they created, all these things. I'm worried about the future of the game. The current game is not the problem. The experience of you buying a ship today does not worry me. Your experience of owning all those ships on day one, where I may not, is what scares me, right? Or the feeling or the need to feel like you have to have those ships to give yourself whatever advantage at the start might be, right? Because I want to experience things first, or I want to experience things fast, or I want to do something first, right? And that's some things in MMOs like that are really fun. That's going to be really hard to do in some scenarios if you don't have everything, right? But you also, having everything, you also, at least in Star Citizen, you need a little bit of skill. You need some friends that are good communicators, and you need to understand the game mechanics too. So there's more to it than just having those things. That's the kind of good part about Star Citizen, is instead of going, well, you have these skills to tick off, like mining skill and salvaging skill or something like that, and it goes up over time by gaining experience. The buying of a spaceship or the buying of experience or the buying of money would be a lot more detrimental than I think it is. So I don't think Star Citizen is the king of these problematic games, nowhere near it. But I do see the purchasing of spaceships being problematic.
Start to take a look at the upper echelons of the whaling world and see when the scales really start to tip. This article on Forbes explores how mobile games generate roughly 50% of their income from only 0.15% of their player base. The article does explain how people who buy offline console games may spend hundreds of hours in them, but very rarely do they spend extra money past the original purchase price. But online games are very different. They thrive off allowing people to pay to win. Over on Wired, we get this article where we start to see the real big spending make an appearance. In the article, they interviewed a successful businessman referred to as Lee. Lee explains how he often comes in from a hard day's work, opens up Clash of Clans, and drops around $1,000 a month. Lee actually says in the article that gaming has helped him save money, because usually he would spend upwards of $6,000 a night out with his friends, so this was actually the cheaper version for him. This is the kind of person we're dealing with. The article then introduces us to a player known only as Panda.
He goes, this is the kind of person we're dealing with. The one thing that I have a hard time with Josh here is Josh may not kind of live in the world that I've lived in, where there's the poorest person in the world who is like literally begging for money to continue to gamble $5, $10, $15 at a time, sitting right next to a multi-million, possibly billionaire, because I definitely deal to billionaires as well, that own private jets and live on islands, right? And they're sitting literally feet from each other. And the thing about it is, the $10, $15 means so much to that person who's so poor, but $6,000 is literally nothing to that person. It is a drop in the bucket. So the numbers he's putting out there, and sort of being a little bit, it almost feels like he's being a little bit, like pointing out that these people have issues because of the amount of money they spent. Well, you don't know how much money they have. Money is relative. And I guess what you're looking for is people that do make a good living and are willing to spend those amounts of money. Like, and that's the problem with games like mobile games that, you know, maybe are somewhat competitive, is that thing isn't available to everyone. Sure, everybody can click the button and spend $1,000, but spending $1,000 on a mobile game is available to the guy who would spend $6,000 a month on going out with his friends. You know, so it's not available to somebody like me. I just wish Star Citizen ended up being an MMO where
who at the
we all
time
started
was one
with
of
a
the top
starter ship
10
and that was
Clash
it,
of Clans
you know?
players in the world. He brags about spending upwards of $7,000 a month, which he states is around 7% of his total monthly income, meaning this guy is making $100,000 a month.
Yep.
Later in the article, we meet Vince, who has put $16,000 into the Facebook game Battle Pirates. Vince made the top 100 players, and he justified his expense with, you want to be the top. Once you've spent $200, what's another $200? There are even articles written online about how to encourage and capture whales inside your game, because finding a whale is a massive market. But these are mobile games.
Like, think about it. If you're just a small developer, create a mobile game, it's like you and two of your friends, and some guy's paying you $7K a month, just one guy. Like, why wouldn't you do this?
They're designed specifically to hunt down whales, to hook them in, and then to milk them dry. Let's start to look at the MMORPG world and the really high-paying players involved there. This is a video by YouTuber Hedon, where they talk to a
And this is where you can start making the comparisons to what could possibly happen in Star Citizen.
Black Desert Online player who has spent a substantial amount of money. This is how
Possibly.
the video opens.
You see my transaction history. I think I'm about at 160K. So I swiped, I think, 2K a day for a whole month.
$160,000. $2,000 a day. Now we're getting into the big numbers. This video is 34 minutes long and is a great watch and a view into the mind of a whale. It's linked in the description below. To truly understand the spending habits of whales, all you need to look at is the game's cash shop, and then look at the largest amount of premium currency you can buy in one go. For example, here's crates of Eve Plex. The largest crate is $430. This crate would be a weekly, or in some cases daily, purchase of a whale. Ruins of Magic sell diamonds for hundreds of pounds. Neverwinter has bundles of Zen for hundreds of pounds. Genshin Impact sells Genesis crystals for hundreds of dollars. These value packs are not rare one-off purchases every now and again. They are weekly or daily whale bait.
And you can buy currency in Star Citizen.
And they work. So with the Pareto principle in full effect and 20% of the player base generating 80% of the profits, why does the game need you? Why does the game need free players? What is the relationship? Well, it's actually quite strange. Whales and free-to-play players have a symbiotic relationship. They both need each other to survive.
We have those people in Star Citizen. I know someone who spent $230,000 on an account in Star Citizen, all ships, no giveaways. Do you know my favorite thing about this is that the current experience in Star Citizen is you can only have 3 ships out at a time. What are you doing with all those ships?
The whales need the free players to whale over. The free players are the measuring mark, the yardstick that the whales can then beat, can then rise above. The free-to-play players are the masses that the whales come along and crush. The free players are the unprepared army that the overpowered whale crushes under their gold-plated boot. This is why many games give you, as a free player, just enough power and just enough premium currency to make you think you're making progress. But
okay, so this is where it's like not quite in comparison, but have you ever seen anytime a new player or anytime a veteran player shows off a new player Star Citizen, what is the first thing they do, chat? What's the first thing they do? Do they show them how to succeed at the game with their starter ship? They show them the big ship. They whip out their dick and they put it on the table, right? And they say, look at this thing, right? You don't show them the game. They show them the ships. And that's the thing where I think you get that little dopamine hit in Star Citizen, showing off your big boy ship and hearing the guy go, wow, that's so big. Yeah.
If you ever do meet a whale, especially in a PvP game, you
That's
will
like
be
the only comparison, I think.
outmatched and outclassed every single time.
But
now,
you're
the
not really
greatest
getting
thing that
outclassed
can
in
happen for
PvP
a
like
free
the
game
example
is for
he's
two
giving.
whales to get into a fight with each other, because then each whale will throw money at the game to win. It becomes wallet versus wallet, and the real winner at that point is the game. This is exactly why games have leaderboards. It's why if you are able to pay for power, there will be some way to show it off. It's why when Runes of Magic launched their boosted servers, they had several world-first titles that would be shown on the forums. You could
Boosted
pay
servers?
for a major
What the hell
benefit
is that?
to get the world first and then advertise the fact that you had it. That's why when people say, hey, we should divide it so paying players have their own separate PvP and free players have their own separate PvP, as great as that would be for the players, it wouldn't actually be very good for the payers. People who pay money want to beat the free players. People who buy power want to use it against people that don't have it. That's exactly the reason for...
Ooh, this is why I love everything that I see on Spectrum. Ooh, it gives me the tingles. It makes me feel so good, because that is the moment where Star Citizen rises above everything. Because guess what you get out of Star Citizen? You get the player who is complaining about the griefer. And what's really and what does the griefer say to the player? Get good. Get good, bitch. You're trash. Get good. And that's what happens. That's what's really good about Star Citizen. That's why I'm saying there's pay to win, but it's not as bad as these other games, right? Because you're not item leveled above people. You may have that ship, which is like your item level, but item level isn't as important. Okay? But Star Citizen absolutely has pay to gain advantage, pay to win, and some elements of it, but it is nowhere near as detrimental and as bad as other games, right? Because for the most part, you can't buy upgrades to your ship. You can't buy a module that just aims for you, right? You still need that skill gap, right? You still need that skill gap exists, and that is where Star Citizen succeeds. What I am worried about where Star Citizen may be pay to win is scenarios like, think of the ship, the Pioneer, the ship that can build outposts or whatever it's going to do. We don't even know, right? Having that ship on day one and also having land on day one, well, you might get that really nice spot to buy at the beginning of the river at Microtech. You know, you might be able to place in a really, really advantageous spot. You need supplies for the Pioneer. Oh, well, just buy UEC and then buy it from the players who actually grind. Or just buy it UEC and then buy it in game, right? There's an argument over this every single time, okay? The advantage only gets taken away if there is a skill check with reputation at some point, and even then, the people who do the skill check will just sell to the people who buy it. And you could just sit there on your lazy butt. I know it's not lazy. Obviously, people have kids, jobs, all these other things, but there you go. So there's always an option to have paid for it with real money, even though it was, I bought currency and then bought it. And that's what I'm worried about, is that, well, you guys who have the biggest, best exploration ships, guess what you're going to do? You probably are going to be the people who find the jump point first, and name it or whatever, because that was the thing that Star Citizen said it would do. You are going to be the people who get the best locations for land right near a city, right outside the city, if that is a thing, right? We don't know what any of the things are, but I'm just saying you may get this crazy advantage just because. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm not saying that's what's happening or that's what will happen, but that's what I am scared of, right?
For buying power at all. The problem with focusing on the whales, the 20% of your player base, is that when you do that, you ignore the other 80. Yes. Whales are the incredibly small fraction of the player base spending an incredibly large amount of money. Remember the Pareto principle from earlier, the 80-20 rule? Well,
and man, is the 80% in Star Citizen not being completely ignored right now? They get love, I think, once a year at IAE, I believe, where the starter ships are like really the big focus putting out there. And I mean, I guess, you know what, I'll take that back. I think everyone is being ignored because nobody's developing Star Citizen. They're all developing Squadron 42. I take it back.
If you condense that down in the correct ratio, that is the 80-20 ratio to itself, you do actually end up with 0.2% of players spending 51% of all generated income, which corroborates the study from earlier in the Forbes article. If you ever wondered how low population games stay alive or how tiny niche communities seem to somehow generate enough money to support the devs and still get updates, it's because the player base has been condensed down to just the whales, the magic 20% big spenders. And this puts game designers in a very awkward position. Remember the potion shop analogy from earlier? Well, if a whale says to you, I want you to start making green swords, then you best start selling green swords. But if the rest of the player base says, we don't want green swords, what do you do? Whales need free players to have someone to whale against. Free players need whales to fund the game they're playing for free.
This is where Star Citizen is kind of unique as well. I've seen the whales scream and yell and cry like little babies, and then what does Xylo do and come out and say? Especially with the griefing comments, is you should handle PvP problems with PvP solutions. And I thought that was a great bit of communication there. The constant communication that space isn't a safe place, and we want things to be quite open and for people to do things, right? So that's kind of good communication there. And then at the same time, I've seen, whale-ish players complain about certain elements of the game and what they would like to see. And Star Citizen continues to do what they think is best for them. You have to define whale there. I don't know of any PvP. Okay, let's just call it... it's hard to define whale in Star Citizen, because a concierge player is like not rare. But I don't think it's just whales, but it's people who feel that their experiences are being ruined. And those people typically don't just have a starter ship, right? So, yeah. I just think in general, the idea of players crying for certain things and CIG kind of just doing their own thing, and that being a thing. And whoever made the EM missile comment, you know that that's just a bug, dude. Like, what?
Need income, but you also need a player base. If you cater your game to the 80% of players that only generate 20% of your income, you're leaving a huge amount of revenue on the table unaccounted for, and that's just a bad business decision. But if you cater to the 20% of players and ignore the 80, you'll likely make more money in the short term by doing so, but you'll potentially damage your player base over time. You'll build up a reputation of only listening to the higher payers and ignoring the average casual player. And if this continues, the casual player base will begin to drop off, and then the whales will leave because
you will make money for 15 years. You'll become Blizzard if you pay attention to the 80.
They won't have a free-to-play community to lord it over anymore. So the next time you look at an MMO and think, oh, why does it have a cash shop? Why does it have pay-to-advance quickly features? Why is it selling power? Well, it's because if they capture just a few whales, they will make more money from them than from the rest of the player base combined. It's a purely business decision, and it's been proven to work. Yep. Oh, and also, if you Google MMO whale, the first advert that comes up is for Star Citizen. Not making any comments on that, just thought it was funny. In other news, next year will mark the 10th anniversary of the Star Citizen Kickstarter. I wonder how the game is looking now. Fantastic. It's looking absolutely fantastic. If you consider yourself a whale and you have more fun in games being able to buy power and be more powerful than other people, let me know why you enjoy playing that way in the comments below. If you believe it should be against a game's terms of service to be allowed to buy power at all, let me know. Or if you think that actually it's a more complex situation than this, and maybe whales buying power is the only way that a game is able to fund itself and remain free to play for the majority of players, and actually maybe there's a benefit to it, let me know as well. As for the big question you're all wondering, is there tea, coffee, or nothing in this mug?
There's water.
It's a Dungeons and Dragons mug. It's full of dice. Thank you for watching. Thanks again to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going. You can support the Patreon from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to all the sources I've used in this video, the Patreon, the Twitch, the Twitter, and the Discord. And as always, have a great day.
I love this guy. I think he's so smart. And obviously, everybody just loves to make Star Citizen look bad. And I think he is being somewhat unreasonable there, but at the same time, like we said throughout the entire video, there is no game to even play. Yeah, dude, Morph, you're on your villain arc, and I'm enjoying it. So yeah, I thought in general that this is it does highlight how Star Citizen isn't as bad as people make it out to be. Because if you look at mobile games, and even if you look at some MMOs and things like that, it's bad, dude. It's bad. And Star Citizen definitely has that skill that kind of takes away that element a little bit. But I am very worried about the future of this game and how it could absolutely be pay to win. It's kind of scary. It really, really is. And it's already too late if it is.